Well, a very good good evening, I should say, and a very warm welcome to you. Hi guys, it's Cassim, and welcome to another episode of Journal Entries. As usual, I just want to really take this moment to thank you so much for watching. I want to take this moment to thank you so much for joining me, and I'm really hoping that something that I say today or something that I share with you today can help you become a higher, fuller expression of who you're capable of becoming, and something that I share with you today can in some way help you to elevate your life, help you to become a higher, fuller expression of yourself, and hopefully help you get some of the things that you want and desire in your life. Okay, so there's a lot that I want to talk to you about today, but there's three particular things that I want to talk to you about. The first thing that I want to talk to you about is I want to talk to you about why, above having grandchildren, the greatest gift that any child can give their parents is to come into their own, is the gift of becoming everything that they're capable of becoming. The second thing that I want to talk to you about is about the fact that history repeats itself until somebody stops the pattern, until somebody breaks the curse, until somebody does something different. And the third thing that I want to talk to you about is I want to talk to you about the fact that no amount of money, you've probably seen this in the title anyway, that no amount of money or external accomplishment will ever make you happy. So if you're one chapter ahead, go back and help somebody else. Okay, without me getting into the usual stuff, most of you know the reason why I started journal entries. So let me give you a brief reason. I started it because I believe that essentially you cannot be a successful person or consider yourself to be a successful man without having a successor, and I wanted to use my journal entries and some of the things that I wrote down to help inspire you to start your own journal entries, and that's really essentially it, giving it a very brief overview because I really want to get into some of the things that I want to talk to you about today. So I hope that's today in some way I can inspire you, that today in some way I can get you to get to the point where you start your own journaling. All right, so let's talk about the first thing that I want to talk to you about today, which is that above having grandchildren, the greatest blessing a human being can give their parents or caregivers is the blessing of coming into their own, is the blessing of becoming everything that they're meant to be. Right, so this week I've been really thinking quite deeply about this. You know, up until last year, I was really thinking about what the greatest gift somebody can give their parent. And I was really actually thinking about my mum. And I was like, what would be the greatest gift that as Cassim I can give my mum? Primarily because my mum raised me as her son for the first part of her life as a single parent. And I was like, you know, I want to in some way give back to my mum. I want to in some way give my mum a present. And I was like, what is the greatest gift that I can give my mum? Is it to send her to New York? Would it be to buy her a car? Would it be to pay off her mortgage? What is it? What present would my mum consider to be the greatest gift that I can give her? And I wrote down loads of ideas, but because of my research and having spoken to so many people who were older than me, I basically came to the conclusion up until last year that the greatest gift that a child can give their parent is to give them a grandchild. Purely because I started studying people, particularly relationships, where a mother and son or a mother and daughter would not speak to each other for years, but the child has a child, and of course the parent becomes a grandparent, and all of a sudden there is a reconciliation and there is a coming back together when a grandchild is born. There is something about having a grandchild that is really important to parents, that is really important to grandparents, to the degree where somebody would be prepared to not speak to their children or their child for like 10-15 years, and when that child has a child, they come back and they go through a reconciliation and again speak to their child and try to make it work because they want a relationship with their grandchild. So I thought that must be the highest gift that you can give somebody. But intuitively, I was like, I don't know. I don't think that that is the greatest gift that you can give somebody. So over the last kind of year, I've really been thinking about this. And it was only, I guess, this week that I've really come to the conclusion that I've come to, which is that the greatest gift really you can give your parents or your caregivers is to become everything that you're supposed to become. And the reason I say this is that I wanted to know if let's say, God forbid, my mum was to die, what would put my mum at rest? And I thought, even if I didn't have a grandchild, my mum could die and be at peace. But I wanted to know what would leave my mum on edge. If my mum was going to pass away and she was like dying and she thought, do you know what, I'm worried about Cassim, what is it that she would be worried about? And I've come to realise that my mum would be more worried about me not becoming everything that I'm supposed to be becoming. That my mum passing away and coming to the conclusion or the belief that, do you know what? Cass will be okay. Cassim will figure it out. Cassim will be all right. Cassim will come into his own. And I've come to realize that that really is when I talk to my mum and my mum is worried or anxious about me, that is usually what she's worried about. She's worried about, is Cassim going to be okay? Is Cassim going to figure it out? Is Cassim going to become everything that he's supposed to become? That's what really my mum is worried about. And so what I would encourage you to come to the realization as well in your life is that, listen, having grandkids, being in a relationship that makes you unhappy, all of this kind of stuff, honestly, as much as your parents will be worried about it, that is not what is going to give your parents peace. That is not the highest gift that you can give them. The highest gift that you can give them is to become everything that you're supposed to become, is to basically become into your own. And it's funny because by this, ironically, that may mean that you may go against your parents' wishes. For example, your parents might have dreamt for you to become an accountant. But actually, the dream that you have for yourself, or in order for you to come into your own, in order for you to be happy, in order for you to fulfill your destiny and to live what you define to be a good life, you may want to be a music DJ. But that is a complete opposite to what your parents envision for your life, and it will upset them. But I say to people all the time that if you want to hate your parents, do what your parents want you to do. If you want to absolutely guarantee that you resent your parents, that you hate your parents, the advice that I give you is do everything that your parents want you to do and do nothing that you want to do. That is an absolutely sure way to basically get to the point where you resent your parents, where you hate your parents. Most of you are unaware of this because you don't get to speak to as many people as I speak to, but I have been given the insight and the privilege of having spoken to a lot of people who are in their 40s, 50s and 60s. And I can tell you, you would be shocked at the amount of people who blame their parents for the way their life turned out. Well, my mum said to me that I needed to get married, and if I really wanted kids, I needed to find somebody. And I said, right, on the next day, I'm just going to choose that person. Even though that relationship led to me being controlled, led to me gaining loads of weight, led to me losing my self-confidence. You would be shocked. I think it was J.K. Rowling who once said that there is an expiry date on blaming your parents for steering you in the wrong direction. The moment you're old enough to take the steering wheel, it is your time to take over. And it's very true. And the reason why J.K. Rowling said that is because a lot of people, without even realizing it, blame their parents. They blame their caregivers. You know, even I was somebody who believed this. I always believed, you know what, if my parents weren't poor, then I would have been able to go on many more holidays. If my parents weren't poor, I would have had a better chance at succeeding in life if they sent me to a boarding school where I could meet people who were more influential and whose parents were more successful than me, right? And so I really, really, really encourage you that in spite of what your caregivers want you to do, follow your own path. Follow the path that is going to make you fulfilled, right? That is going to get you to the point where you say, do you know what? I know that I'm upsetting my mum. I know that I'm upsetting my parents. I know this is not what my grandparents envisioned for me. But this is not. But this is what's going to make me happy. This is what I want. And for some people, honestly, that may be being single. Your parents might be pushing you and pushing you and pushing you and pushing you down a route to get married. But you don't want to get married. That is not your path. They may be pushing you and pushing you and pressurizing you to have kids, but you don't want to have kids. They may be pushing you and pushing you and pushing you down a career which is safe and secure, but you would much rather not have a career which is safe and secure. You want a career where you have flexibility, where you work for yourself, right? And so that is what I've been really thinking about this week. And I just thought for you, maybe you've never really thought about that, and you've never really thought, actually, a sure way to really resent my parents is to do what they want me to do and not to do what I believe deep down and what I want to do and what I actually believe in. And that sometimes means standing up for yourself, you know. There is a day when it's interesting for me, because I was thinking about this, and I was thinking that really, to get the respect of your parents, you have to get to the point where you basically stand by your decision, whether they are wrong or they're right, whether they're successful or unsuccessful. When you do that and you stick to it and you hold by your guns and you do whatever is necessary and you become whatever you need to become, that's when you actually gain the respect of your parents. That's when your parents are like, do you know what? Maybe it's not the decision I would have made, but fair play to you, son. We raised you to be independent. We raised you to make your own decisions. We raised you and we want you to be happy. And even though it may not be our version of happy and our version of success, you're happy. Like, that is all that we want for you. And I would just, as I say, I would just encourage some of you guys, and I don't know who I'm talking to here, but I would just encourage you to really look at that. Maybe you've been living your life from your parents' paradigm, from what makes them happy, from what they want you to do, from what is going to appease them, from whatever is not going to cause conflict between you and your mum. But you may need to cause a bit of conflict. You may need to ruffle some feathers in order for you to become happy, in order for you to be fulfilled, in order for you to be at peace. Right? Some of you guys may need to set some boundaries around you, right? Where there's been a tradition in your family that you've always had, gone round to your parents every Sunday and had food at theirs. But you want to start your own tradition. Maybe you want to go to salsa classes on a Sunday, which means you're going to have to set a boundary and say no to your parents to going around on Sundays. And some of you, in that desire not to cause conflict with your parents, you would just rather go along with it even though it's making you miserable, even though you're unhappy. And I would just encourage you, as your friend, as somebody who wants you to do well and I want you to be happy, I would just encourage you to look at that. So that's the first thing that I would share with you. The second thing that I've been journaling about and that I've been thinking about is that everything repeats itself until somebody is the exception, until somebody breaks a rule. Many of you, I'm sure you've heard of that saying, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. It is so true. Literally, the apple really does not fall far from the tree. You know, it's funny how many people get to a point in their life where they're like, oh my God, I've turned into my mum. Oh my God, I've turned into my dad. Oh my God, I sound like my dad. I'm starting to sound like my mum. I'm starting to sound like my dad. And many of us, because we're not very self-conscious, because we're not very self-aware, because we're not living in the present moment, because we're not attuned to our patterns, to our behaviors, to our ways of thinking, many times we're not aware of who we've become, right? You know, there is a saying that I have that you want to be very careful that in running away from who you didn't want to become like, that you don't end up avoiding who you want to become. I don't know whether that makes sense. So say you don't want to become like your mum, you want to be very careful that you don't end up spending all your time trying to not become like your mum and no time on the person who you want to become. And I made that mistake. I made the mistake when I was growing up that I wanted to be nothing like my biological father. Because my biological father got my mum pregnant at 14, disappeared off the face of the planet, travelled all around the world and has multiple babies with multiple women all across the planet, right? And I was like, I never want to become like him. And in that pursuit, I never actually made a decision to and envisioned who I wanted to become. And so I inadvertently ended up kind of becoming somebody who I never actually wanted to become because I'd never focused on who I wanted to become. And that's why today I'm very intentional about who it is that I am, about who it is that I want to become, about what it is that I stand for, about what it is that I believe. Because if I don't know what it is, who I want to become or what I believe, I'll end up becoming exactly like the things that I'm trying to run away from. And what I would say to you guys is that, you know, so many of you guys who are listening to me, you don't want to walk away from the crowd. You don't want to ruffle feathers. You don't want to upset people. But unfortunately, in order for you, there is a saying that says, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing in the same way and expecting a different outcome. If you want different outcomes, if you want different results, if you want to have more, if you want to achieve more, if you want to be more fruitful, if you want more vitality in your life, you are going to need to do some different things than you've been doing previously. You're going to need to behave in different ways than your parents have been behaving, right? You're going to have different rituals, different habits, different traditions, different ways of thinking, different attitudes, different patterns, different emotional states, right? For example, some of you who are listening to me, the emotional states that you know that basically you operate yourself from are pissed off, angry, hungry, and drunk. And the reason why you know those is because when you were growing up, that's what your parents were. Your parents were always resentful and pissed off at the fact that they hate their job, they hate their boss, they don't like their boss, they hate the fact that they have to wake up early, they hate the fact that they're not being paid enough. Then they would get really angry about it. They would get angry about the weather. They'd get angry about... Your mum would get angry about your dad not doing the washing or mowing the lawn. Then there was drunk, which is where you remember your parents always getting smashed or getting drunk on a Saturday or whatever, and that was the only kind of joy that they had in their life. And for you, that's all you know. So if we look at your life, you essentially usually are pissed off, angry, or drunk, or hungry, right? And in order for you to live higher and to have more and to become everything that you want to become in your life, can I make a suggestion that you may need to explore some things outside of your comfort zone? Some things, you know, for example, emotional states that are beyond where you're at. For example, you might want to look at being grateful, gratitude. For example, some of you guys, you do not employ the emotion of gratitude in your life. You do it every maybe once and then, but it is not a regular emotion in your life. What about peace, right? Is having and being at peace an emotional state that you operate in a lot in your life? You see what I mean? And that may be different for you. And the reason why I say this to you, and I wanted to share it with you, is because I've just realized so many of us in life, including myself, we want to be somewhere else, but we want to still be part of the crowd. We want to still fit in. We want to still have everything exactly the same. And what I would share with you is, look, if you want stuff, and you guys who are listening to me, you know you can virtually get anything that you want. Most of the things that you're asking for aren't like ridiculous or far-fetched or unheard of or that insane. They're all pretty reasonable things. So what I would share with you is this. Push outside of your comfort zone. Do things beyond what you know. Explore some things. Go out there and meet some new people who are not usually who you know. Listen to music that is not usually music that you listen to. You know, for example, when I'm writing, I listen to Mozart, right? I listen to Chopin. Now, let's be completely honest, guys. Mozart is not necessarily what you would stereotypically consider to be black music if you want to stereotype, is it? Right? Listening to Mozart or Chopin is just not what I would consider to be black music. But I listen to it because it vibrates on a different frequency. It makes me feel differently. It releases a different kind of energy within me that I'm not really used to. And when I'm writing, it's really useful. It's simple things like that, guys. I mean, I'm not talking about you making some massive dramatic change like becoming freaking astronaut or something. I'm just talking about pushing to the edges and outside of what you know, right? Some of the attitudes that you know, some of the traditions that you know. Maybe every single time that you get paid at the end of the month, the first thing that you do is go out that weekend. Have you tried, perhaps, investing the money that you've got? Have you ever tried that? The first thing, when you get paid, the first thing that you do is you take £100 of your money and you give it to your mum to save for you. And you tell your mum, under no circumstances for the next year are you to give me this money. No matter how bad things get, no matter how much I'm in debt, no matter how much I'm crying, no matter how depressed I am, do not give me the money. It sounds very simple, but if you do let's say take £100 and you gave that to your mum every single month over the period of a year, number one, by the end of the year, you would have set up a new habit. But number two, you have £1,000 by the end of the year. Sorry, God damn it, I can't even write. I can't even speak. I'll do maths. £1,200 by the end of the year. Can you imagine what you could do with £1,200? You know, invest in a book, invest in a course, invest in a charity, go on an amazing holiday. The amount of choices and options that become available to you seems so much wider. And so what I'm saying to you is, when you begin to open up your mind and you begin to do things that are different, and you begin to break the pattern and you begin to step outside of the crowd, more options actually become available to you. See, guys, you don't understand. If you have always gone to the same country on holiday, there are technically no choices for you. But if you say, right, what other places in Europe can I go on holiday next year? All of a sudden, choices open up for you now. And there is so many more places that are available to you. I don't know, it's just something that I wanted to share with you guys, and I just thought would be useful for you to think about. The last thing that I wanted to share with you is about the fact that no amount of money or external accomplishment will ever make you happy or satisfied. So if you are a chapter ahead, go back and help somebody else. So many of you, and actually a lot of people ask me, I mean, Cassim, why is it that you want to do these videos and you want to write books and speak about success when you're not successful? Right? Because to a lot of people, we define somebody being successful, essentially being on TV, having a massive house, having a really nice car, having loads of money in the bank. That is how the average human being, and I'm generalizing here, would define somebody to be successful. Right? But I actually consider myself to be a success. And the reason why I consider myself to be a success is because I do not define success in terms of those things. Right? I'd accomplished many of those things in my life very early on in my life. And I realized when you get there, it's still empty. And what I basically learned is, and it's actually part of the reason why I'm doing these journal entries, is no matter what goal you reach in your life, when you get there, there's always going to be another goal. If you are currently earning, let's say 15k, and you say, Cassim, next year when I'm earning 35k and I get a better job, I'm going to start giving to charity. I'm telling you, when you earn 35k, you're not going to give more money. You're not going to give to charity, because everything moves up. Your lifestyle moves up, right? Do you know how many people say, if I became a millionaire, I'd give money to charity? They don't, guys. If you won't give money to charity when you're poor or you don't have very much, you're not going to give money to charity when you have more money, right? If you won't give 10% of your wages when you get paid £1,000, you are not going to give 10% of £1 million. That's £100,000. You're not going to give that much money away, right? And so I think so many of us in life, we wait for the perfect moment to help other people. We wait for the perfect moment to go back and help other people. But I've actually learned that if you're a chapter ahead, go back and help somebody else. If you are somebody, clearly, who's really good in the gym and you've managed to master your vitality, you don't need to be some bodybuilder or 70 years of age to go back and help somebody else who's struggling with their weight. Now, obviously, they're going to want you to help them, because if you go, because unfortunately, unsolicited advice is considered as criticism. So the person has to want your advice, right? They have to be open to it. If you clearly have struggled a lot with quitting smoking and you see somebody who's struggling with smoking, listen, you don't need, if you have been able to go 3 or 4 months, start going back and giving them some tips. You don't need to be like 4 or 5 years sober of smoking to go back and help those people. And, you know, one of the greatest things that I have learned, particularly about becoming a teacher, is when you start becoming a teacher and you start helping other people, many people don't realize what happens. Because what happens is the people who you're coaching actually hold you accountable. Right? Because a lot of us don't have anybody to hold us accountable. The moment you kind of leave home, there isn't really anyone to hold you accountable, right? Unless you're kind of in a relationship and you got your missus, but really your missus is not going to really hold you accountable for what you do with your life, and unless you kind of have children, right? And so for a lot of us, we have nobody to hold us accountable. A really easy way to be held accountable is to start helping other people. Guess what you do? If you start helping other people with smoking, you have no choice but to actually practice what you preach, right? Many people don't understand. You know, people ask me all the time, Cassim, this is the common question people ask me. Cassim, like for example, before I did this today, this video, I went for a 13-mile run. And many people will say to me, Cassim, why are you running for 13 miles? Are you training for something? And I say, no, not really. But the reason why I have to run 13 miles is I tell people all the time, push outside of your comfort zone. Exercise. If you can do more, do more. You have to be fit. You have to have vitality, right? If you really want to do remarkable things, you need energy, which means you need to feel strong, you need to feel powerful, you need to feel flexible, you need to be comfortable in your skin, which you can't be if you don't look after your body. Here's the issue. Imagine I told you that and then you saw me never running. You never saw me going to the gym. You always saw me eating crap. Guess what the first thing you're going to say to me is? Cass, I thought you said that we should be having vitality. This is actually what began to happen like about 4 or 5 years ago when I first started doing this. And so I very quickly learned, shit, I have to actually walk the walk. When I tell people that they have to journal, I've genuinely got a journal. So when you come to where I live, if you ever came to where I live, I literally have so many journals all over the place, right? When you hear me say that if you want to change your life, you need to get ideas. The way you get ideas is to expose yourself to new information. And the easiest way to get new information without knowing, because one of the ways you get information is through other people, but a lot of us don't know a lot of wise people. So I say the easiest way is through books. Essentially, books are people's ideas, strategies, and tactics that they've written down, right? So if you ever came to where I live, as everybody is always shocked, I literally have thousands of books. Every single week, I order 3 books. So I have so many books. Why? Because somebody will speak to me about something and I would be like, oh God, I have no idea about that. For example, if you follow me on social media, one of the things that I've been recently researching is lactose intolerance, right? Somebody was telling me that they have a lactose intolerance allergy, but I didn't know what it was. I can drink milk. I have no problem with it. But I didn't really understand where it came from, what it was about. And so I actually had to go and Google it. I had to go and understand it, right? And one of the things that I say to people is you should have an open mind. So guess what? In order for me to have an open mind, I've got to search things that are way outside of my normal stuff. So, for example, if you follow me on social media, you'll notice that all the time I research bizarre things. Why? Because somebody speaks to me about something that I have no idea about, and I'm like, right, okay, well, if I'm really going to walk the talk and actually practice what I preach, I've got to do this stuff. So what essentially I wanted to finish with, and is what I kind of was trying to get to you, is many of you guys are actually already successful in different areas of life, but you don't realize that you are, right? And the issue is you keep saying, well, Cassim, when I'm 40, I help somebody else. When I earn 60 grand, then I help somebody else. When I become the manager, then I'll help somebody else. No, it's really as simple as you can. Let me give you a perfect example of what I mean by this. So many of you know I work in Tesco's, right? And in Tesco's, there's a new girl who's joined. And she's been really struggling. Now, I moved Tesco's recently, so I'm actually new to this Tesco's. And she's been really struggling to kind of pick, because you know what I do in Tesco's. My job is to basically pick people shopping. And there's a target for me to pick as many shopping as possible. And she's really struggling with it. And yesterday, I was saying to her, look, one of the things that I'd recommend to you is that I'm obviously new, but one of the ways in which you can become faster is start thinking in your head about wider than what the person is buying. Because what she was doing is she'd look on the system for what the person wants, and then she'd go straight to that thing, look for it and get it. But I was like, you want to try and plan things. For example, and this is what I said to her. I said, if you see that somebody's ordered tomato sauce, like bolognese sauce, guess what else you should be thinking in your head? And most of you have already probably predicted this. What else is the person going to order? Pasta, right? So if somebody usually orders like bolognese sauce, you know there is a high likely chance they're probably going to order some kind of pasta. So you want to try and think ahead so that you can predict, so that you can kind of begin to make references and figure out a quicker way to do this. Now, I'm obviously new, and there's people who've been there at Tesco's doing the same job for like 10 years who are much better than me. But I wanted to go back and help her, because that piece of advice has actually been very useful for her, because she came up to me later on and she said, actually, Cassim, I've started to pick quicker because of what you said, right? Do you see what I mean? And I said to her, look, also the other thing is, start recognizing what people order, because people order the same things. Everybody orders the same things. Most of us, we think that when you go into a shop, everybody orders completely random things. No, they don't. Every single day, I pick the same ingredients: milk, butter, broccoli, spring onions. It's the same things everybody orders every single day. Right? And I said to us, start remembering this stuff and remember where it is, so that next time you don't have to look on the pick stick and try to go to the same department as if it's brand new. So that's what I wanted to finish with. I hope that it's helped you. I don't know whether it's been useful to these 3 points to you or not. But I encourage you to start your own journaling, guys. That's why I do these journal entries. I want you to journal what you are thinking about, to journal the conclusions you've come up with, what you believe, what you stand up for, right? What is important to you? What do you believe parenting is? What do you believe a good life is? You know, this journaling exercise does not only make you present, but it also makes you pay attention to your life, guys. A lot of people, the reason why they're unhappy in their life is because they end up in areas where they didn't mean to be, because they just didn't pay attention. When you start journaling, it forces you to pay attention, because it forces you to look at your life. You know, a lot of people, guys, they live in denial. Right? They think that the denial is a river down forget that the denial is a river down in Africa. They forget this, and they continuously keep pretending things in their relationship are okay when they're really not. They say that their future will be okay when it really isn't, right? And journaling really helps you do that. So I want to thank you so much for watching. You guys know the usual stuff. If you like what I've shared with you and you want to support me, join my community, jump on YouTube. Channel's called Cassim. Support me, like and subscribe to it. Otherwise, guys, I will see you next week, and thank you so much for watching. Bye for now.